Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you very much for coming to this session. If you can't see where you are, please, there's still some nice seats up here. Might be an opportunity to meet some new people. Everyone can be cozy here. And I have to apologize that this is I think it's my fifth or sixth trip to the Czech Republic, but my Czech has not gotten any better. So I am sure that your English is much better than my Czech. So I will try to talk very slowly and very clearly, but if I go too fast, and I often go too fast, please let me know and I can slow down. Now, this isn't really a formal workshop. I want you to get information that you need out of this workshop. So if you have a question, feel free to ask it anytime. With the lights here in my face, I can't see you so well maybe, but just yell or somebody say something and we can take care of questions as they come. If it's a question that has a very long answer, I might tell you to wait until the end, or we can talk later at the reception. Otherwise, I will try to answer your questions as we go. So, okay, everybody ready? Okay. Let me learn something about you. How many people in this room have used ArcGIS Online? Okay, maybe not so many. For those that used ArcGIS Online, did you use it in an organization or a public account? So organization. Okay, all right, good. One interesting thing is that all of you, if you use ArcGIS Desktop, when you go to 10.2, you are going to have an ArcGIS Online organization. So this will be, I think, important information for you, and I think we can just going. Do I have a clicker? No clicker. Okay. All right. And I apologize. I have some monitors here. So when I sit down and do demos, I'm not going to be able to see you, and you won't see me, but that's okay. You're going to want to see the screen. All right. So what we're going to do is I call it a best practices session. But most of the time when I'm presenting this, I'm presenting it to people that are already pretty familiar with ArcGIS Online. So I will focus on best practices. But I think since many of you have not used ArcGIS Online, or many of you might just be beginning, I will focus on some of the basics and we'll try to do everything all at once. So with ArcGIS Online, there are two kinds of accounts. There's a public account and an organization account. Public accounts are free. Anybody can use them. Lots of students and teachers and kids and grandmothers use an ArcGIS Online public account. It has basic features but doesn't provide any access to additional features that you see in an organization. Public accounts will change, maybe before the end of the year, but maybe not until next year. But public accounts will change a little bit so that you will be able to see everything in an organization. You will be an organization of one in some ways with a public account, but just have limited credits. And I'll explain what that means in a moment. So just remember that it's a very dynamic landscape and things change all the time. Now, an organizational account is meant, I think, for everybody in this room, a professional. And it now comes with ArcGIS. So with 10.2, you get a ArcGIS Online organization and you have a few credits that you can begin with. It's meant for business or professional use, and it has full capabilities, which includes hosted services in the cloud. So I can publish a map. I don't need ArcGIS Server. I can publish a map now directly to the cloud, and off I go. It also provides access to some additional content. So one of the things we'll take a look at is things like real-time traffic. So to access real-time traffic, you have to have an organizational account now. So those are some of the benefits. On top of that, each organization has an administrative console that lets you manage users in your organization, manage how they access content in the organization, and lets you manage how that content is used and how it's distributed. And we'll take a closer look at that as things go on. Okay, so here we are, step one. What's the very first thing you should do? Open up your ArcGIS Online account and begin making maps, right? No. What I recommend is, as an organization, the best thing to do is decide what you're going to do with ArcGIS Online first. So what is the goal of your using ArcGIS Online? Is it to make mobile apps for your workforce? Is it to make web applications that others in your organization can use? Or is it to store all of your geographic assets, or a combination of everything? It's important to understand what your goals are before you begin starting you're lifting up your organization. Think about what problems it will solve, or you want it to solve, and what will be the deliverables. What do people expect? Who is the audience? And most importantly, when you start an organization, one of you or more of you are going to be administrators. So you're the boss. You're in charge. You are the ones that are going to learn best practices. You're going to establish the procedures and things that other people will follow. And that's your job, and that's the most important job in an ArcGIS Online organization. So you have the vision, I hope, or we hope eventually, for what you want to do with ArcGIS Online, and you're the curator, you're the implementer that makes all of this come alive. Now, successful organizations that I've seen begin with ArcGIS Online actually establish a governance committee. I'm not sure if that translates well, but they form a group of people that are interested in working with ArcGIS Online, and they meet regularly. They talk about what they want to do and how they want to do it. That group is usually not just from the GIS department, but from other departments that will also participate in ArcGIS Online. So that's actually very important. Remember the 5 parts of a GIS? Do you remember what they were? There was software, hardware, data, procedures, and what was the most important part? People. That is always the biggest difficulty in GIS, is working through the people issues. So thinking about what you want to do with ArcGIS Online will help you understand how to do that. One of the things that I like to do is I'm making some suggestions to you today. There's no black and white hard rules. You decide what works for you. You decide what practices are best for you to implement. So I'm just providing some suggestions. You should try some of these. See what works, see what's reasonable to do, and then as you learn them, you transfer your knowledge to other people, and they become part of the process of lifting an organization. I believe the best way to accomplish things is to experiment first and then take what's been successful and push that out as your common procedure. One of the things that you will learn is that as an administrator, especially of a large organization, you have some challenges. You have a lot of cats to herd. Do you know what that means? You know, if I was a sheep herder, I could herd sheep. Maybe I'd have help from a dog. But how do you herd cats? You don't. They have a mind of their own. And you will find out that most organizations have lots of people that have a mind of their own. So your challenge will be to keep them in line and moving along with your organization. And that means be flexible, evolve, and communicate well. All right, that's step number 1. Nobody has any questions about step number 1? I think we're good. But that's actually one of the most important parts. Think about what you want to do, Bring in some people that are stakeholders and use that as your core to lift your organization. All right, now comes some of the fun stuff. Your second step is you're going to configure your portal. You want it to make a very good first impression, and you also want other people to understand who you are or who you represent when they visit your portal. So when you go visit ArcGIS online, there's a couple of different ways that we can look at it. This is the public account here. So in some ways you can think of this as Esri is the organization administrator, and we've made some decisions about what that looks like and what maps should be featured here in this gallery ribbon. This is an organization that I worked with and helped them establish. They have a different look and feel, and they've chosen some different applications to highlight here on the ribbon. Now, do you get an impression of this organization when you look at it? Do you think it's a good organization? Does it look good? Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. It's got a nice graphic in the background. The thing I like about this is that the organization's logo is on each of these little applications here. And I know, and you will know soon, that that takes a little bit of extra time to do. So what this tells me is that this organization has taken the time to have a good look and feel, and they've established some best practices. So already I'm feeling confident this is a good organization to visit when I'm looking for information about Montana and the census and economic information that might be here. One thing that I want you to keep in mind, and I will show you some examples, is that lots of these ArcGIS online portals are public. You can find them publicly. But it's not necessarily the best way to make a portal if you really want the public to get at your applications. And why is that? Because you can't hide some of the things that require a little bit of extra knowledge. So for example, one of the things that's built into the portal is a map viewer, and at the top of every portal is a button you can click to open up this viewer. And what is it? It's really an authoring tool. You find layers, you bring them into your map. There's lots of different kinds of layers. There's lots of things you can do with those layers. So right away, if your intended audience is the public, you're exposing them to something that might be confusing because you can't hide that button in your portal. But I will show you how you can use anything in your portal in a more public way that might be easier for everybody to access. But just keep that in mind. Lots of portals in the US are internal. I can't get inside them unless I log in. I can't even see them. So it's not necessarily a public destination. And some of the other things that you can use to make a more public or easier to access destination is you can take your web maps and embed them in your web pages. It's one way. Another way is you can take groups of applications, not web maps, but applications, because remember the web map is an authoring tool, but if I author a map and put it in an application, then I have an easy to use way for people to access that content. I can make a gallery of those applications like that very quickly by putting them in a group, and I'll show you how. You can also take what's in a group and you can make a ribbon that you can embed in your web page as well, and that's very easy to do also. Just a couple of buttons and copy and paste, and you're good to go. Esri does provide some organizational templates now, but I'm thinking maybe these won't work for you yet because they're all US, they're English based. They haven't been internationalized and localized yet. But something you might want to keep in mind, we've got some early adopters of some of these templates. What they provide are everything from graphics to suggestions how to organize your content. These are good starters for many people in the US. I'm not so sure that it will work for you here in the Czech Republic, but they're worth a look, and they're on ArcGIS Online, and they're also covered in blog posts as well. All right. As an organization administrator, you have a web console for configuring your site. And rather than talk about it, I'm just going to show you how that works. But one of the very important building blocks for an organization is a group. A group is just a collection of maps and layers and applications that you put into, it's almost like a folder. And those folders become building blocks for lots of things in your organization. If you want to create a custom base map gallery, you want to use something different than the Esri default base map gallery, you do that by putting base maps in a group and then using that group to make that gallery. It's very simple. No programming, no HTML, no nothing. Organize it into a group and you're good to go. So that's one of the basic building blocks, but this administrator's console, and it's only available to administrators, is how you configure the look and feel of your group and also manage your users and all the assets. One of the things that I like to look at is what these portals look like visually. I'm a visual person. I like maps. I like to look at something. Some people tell me that it's in my astrology. I'm a Virgo. I'm not sure what that means, but people tell me Virgos pay attention to every little tiny bit of detail, and I do. And I like to see things like this when I look at an organization. Both of these are really, really nice. And one of the things I like about this one especially, this is the city of Greenville in North Carolina, is you can tell they've put some thought into this. They have probably a pretty good graphics person or somebody with some talent, and everything here is sort of keyed into the same color scheme. I like that. This tells me that this is an authoritative place for me to go, and this also tells me that the people working behind here, they do great work. And I'll show you some examples of some things that would lead one to believe that there's not such good stuff behind there. So first impressions count, and I just think it's important. I've already told you about how groups are building blocks. I like to do some things like I use colors. Again, I'm a visual person, but I don't like to read things. So if I put some content in a group that I want for public consumption, I might use green, put a green border around that. Green means go, it means public. If I put content in a group that is used internal to my organization, I might use a different logo or maybe put a different color around the background. If you have 2, 3, 4, 5 groups, no problem. But someday you're going to have 50 or you're going to have 100. And rather than have to read through all those groups, if you establish visual cues for what's in those groups and how it's being used, that makes your life very much easier. When you create a group, you also have to document what's in the group. You can leave it empty, but that's not so good. So adding some details, even some links, those are nice things to do when you create a group and put content in it. And it doesn't matter if it's for internal use only or for public use. These groups speak about how professional you are as an organization. All right. This is an example organization that we're going to take a look at. And there's a couple of things I'd like to point out. And I'll show these during the demo. This base map gallery is not the Esri default base map gallery. It's a unique base map gallery to this organization. Again, that was created by putting these base maps in a group and using the group to build the gallery. This is a collection of custom application templates. And again, that was done by putting these application templates into a group and using the group inside your organization. So with an organization subscription, you have a lot more customization capabilities and potential. Again, I'm a Virgo. I pay attention to detail. And I'm visual. I relate to visual things. And what I love is when an organization brands what they expose publicly with something I can recognize. At the top here is the city of Washington, D.C. So all of their maps have this red border around it. And as I'm searching for content on ArcGIS Online, I can always find one of those really easily because it's red. Now some people might say, well, red's angry. All right, maybe. But you can do something different. Here's some examples from, this is City of Greenville. I really like this because what they've done is they've let me see what might be in the map in the background, but they've created a little logo as well that brands this as coming from their organization. And here's another example. This, what's in there? I don't know, maybe something to do with books, or actually this is a map story that has been built. So those kinds of branding are things that I look for. And in an organization, especially on the public stuff, an organization logo really helps establish your brand, helps people find your content, and even if it's internal to your organization, it lets other people in other departments know that you're professional and you have authoritative content. Look how beautiful those thumbnails look and what that group site looks like. Of course, this takes some work. It's not easy to do this, and you have to really do it to make something like this and stay on top of it. So it does require extra work, but I think that the benefits are good. So if I was going to, I need a volunteer from the audience. I'm going to ask, how about you? You're going to be my volunteer. You can sit there, but you're going to be my volunteer. And this is a tough question. On this logo here, this one here, what content might you expect to see if you found that thumbnail in the search? I don't know, but it's global content. Now I'm from the US, so I recognize this outline as the state of Utah. So if I see that, I know the data is coming from Utah, and it looks like it might be geology data is what it looks like. This is obviously something coming from the city of Melbourne. So those visual cues help me right away understand what's there. What's this about? Something we'll be doing very soon. Right? So it's about drinking wine or vineyards or something like that. We already talked about some of the organization branding, and some things that some organizations like to do is they brand their thumbnails using content. So for example, down here on the right, there's a little alarm clock. What does that mean? It means that this is probably a time-enabled map, so that when I open it, I'll expect to see a time slider, and I'll be able to use that. So again, there's no correct way. I'm just offering some suggestions and considerations for you to think about. Now, another thing you need to think about is who's going to represent your organization. All of you have a login, or will have a login, to ArcGIS Online. So my personal login is Szukalski. All right. If I am representing Esri and I'm pushing maps out there publicly, should I do that as Szukalski or should I be Esri? I think Esri. So what I like to recommend is that when you start your organization, create an empty user that is the organization that all of the public content will be owned by, so that when people search for it, they'll be able to see who is publishing it. This I see too often. The person didn't give me any information about who they are. They didn't put a picture. I have no idea who they are, but right away, looking at this, they didn't take the time to properly create a persona, so I'm not sure they did their GIS work properly either. Here's another example. This guy was the project manager for the city of Washington, D.C., and he's obviously a proud young father, and he's done a pretty good job. He tells me who he is, and he gives me some contact information. That's better, much better, but still maybe too personal. When I see something like this, and we'll look at some other examples, I don't see a person, I see an organization. And that gives this a little more value in my mind when I discover content like this. So something to think about is create an organizational persona for all of your public content that might be found on ArcGIS Online. All right. I'm going to do one more section, and I'm going to combine a couple of demonstrations. So let's move on here, and we'll talk about groups. I'll combine this all into one. Most organizations, the groups reflect the organization itself. And a lot of people actually take an organization chart and use that to create groups. Because later on, you will invite other people from your organization to join these groups, and that's going to be where they find the content and maps and apps that you've created for them and you want them to use. Now, most of you already know the organizations you work with. The fire department, the police, planners, maybe geologists. You already know who you work with. So another thing to do is just create those groups and make sort of places for people to go right away and discover useful content there. So a couple of ways that you can start this, but I recommend that you seed this rather than let people make their own. I recommend that you establish that. All right. Now we're going to do a big demo thing here. So I get to sit down and relax, and let's take a look at a couple of things here. All right. Let's take a look at some examples of organizations, and let's take a look. Let's take a look at these, and you tell me what you think. Does this look like a good organization that's got good content in it? Yeah, I think so. They've done a really nice job. They've got some nice graphics here, and looks good to me. Why would this not be a very good public destination, even though it's publicly accessible? Why would it not be a good public destination? Well, for one thing, when I click the top there, it exposes this thing called the map viewer. This is pretty easy to use, but as a public, as my grandmother or my grandfather, I don't know what's a layer from the web and what's a layer from a file and what's a GPX file and things like that. So pretty quickly this puts people in the deep end of the pool, and you don't want to do that. You want to keep people in the shallow end and expose things in different ways. And I'll show you some examples. Now let's see how good New Mexico was with putting easy to use applications featured on the gallery. So I'm going to click this one here and let's see what they've done. Okay, so right away they lose some points in my book. What they've done is they've given me the map viewer. It's okay. It's okay. There's worse crimes than that. Let's click on the map. Okay, so they've given me a little pop-up that tells me information about this. So, okay, that's pretty good. So they're okay. Let's take a look at another site, and let's check out, all right, let's check out these guys. And I've seen these evolve over time, and this one's actually improved quite a lot. The last time I looked at this, it didn't look so professional, but this looks really good. Again, this is a really good example of a well-done group. And let's see if I can find a bad example. I'm glad they're getting harder to find here now. Okay, this one's still pretty good. You know, it's got a nice graphic. They're not using organization branding. This thumbnail here maybe looks like it could use a little improvement. So I might have some things to complain about there. And again, I'm looking for just a terrible one. And it looks like they're all improving. Oh, here's a bad one. Okay, this one doesn't really speak to me too well because I know that they use the default image. So they didn't even bother to change from the default. I also see on their logo that they didn't even use a PNG file because there's no transparency around the logo. You can't see that as well as I can, but I can see that. So that to me says, these guys, they're hacks. The thumbnails are okay. But you know, it's a college, right? So obviously it's busy students or teachers or things like that. But this is probably less than ideal. And maybe let's just take a look at one more that is or has been my favorite for quite some time. And let's see, where did I put that? My life is lost in my well, heck, let's just go to City and County of Honolulu. Let's see what they look like. All right, not too bad either. Again, a pretty looking site. You get the idea. Now let's talk about how we create these. This is one of my organizations that I built for a conference a little while ago, and I am logged in as an administrator. So let's click this button called My Organization. As an administrator, this is my viewpoint to everybody that's in my organization. And this is me. So there's me, and let's see if I did a good job with my user profile. So let's take a look. Okay, pretty good. I at least have a picture and at least have a little bit of a description. But maybe I would want to have another persona that publicly accessible things would be transferred to for public consumption. That might be something. This is how I assign roles to users in my organization. You can see I have a very distinguished organization, and Albert Einstein happens to be an administrator along with me. Now, he's been doing some things I don't like, so I'm going to demote him, and I'm just going to make him a user. So this is your console for controlling access to users. Administrators share common access. So if you're working with multiple administrators, you need to communicate. All right, let's look about how you set up your organization, and that's done here on the left under Edit Settings. And this is a collection of tabs that you go to and just make some decisions and make some choices. This is my thumbnail for my organization, and I can change it at any time. This is the descriptive text, which appears at the front of the organization, and I've included some links to some other things as well. Let's take a look and see what that looks like. So here's that descriptive text right here. And here are some of those links, and I apologize if you're in the back and can't see the bottom. But let's take a look and consider this. This is a nice looking destination. It's pretty good. But there are better ways that I might be able to represent the data that's in my organization in a better public way. So here what I've done is I've taken the City of Brisbane's website and I've stolen it temporarily. I actually made a copy of it locally, and what I've done here is I've added a nice little map to this public website. So this is publicly accessible. It's easy for anybody to come here and interact with the map. So that's a pretty good example of maybe public access. Here's another idea. Here's that same website, but this time what I've done is I've inserted a gallery ribbon. So this gallery ribbon highlights some applications, and these are the same applications which appear on this gallery ribbon here. And notice I said application. Whenever we click on something here in the ribbon, we won't see that web map. We're going to see an application that's focused, it's easy to use, and it's meant to deliver a specific piece of information to a more public audience. And I'm using one of the template applications here, and I'll show you how to actually work with this. This is a very easy template to use. But the idea is that you want to have applications here. All right, let's go back to our administrative console, and let's look at a couple of other things. Let's edit settings again, and now we're going to go to the home page. And this is where I make some decisions about what my background is. And I've already put in a pretty nice little background, but here's an alternative background. So let's go ahead and change this. Actually, before I do that, so I don't wreck everything, I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to use my most favorite tool when working with ArcGIS Online, which is Notepad. And I'm going to take what's in there now, and I'm going to paste it in there so I don't lose it. All right. Now I'm ready to make a mess here of things. So here's a different banner. And the banner sizes are described in the help, but something good is 960, that should be your max, by 400, 470, something like that. I've made a change and I've swapped the banner out, and now I'll click Save, and now when we go back to my home, I've got a different look and feel to my organization. So that's how easy it is to do that. That's pretty simple to do. There are other options for you. For example, I might want to choose one of the built-in options. So let's choose this one, and let's click Save. And you'll recognize this one immediately as the one I complained about earlier. That's the default one that you start with. So this is a very basic kind of logo. But this is where you begin setting up your organization and your organization framework. Now let's, actually before I continue further, let me fix my organization. So I'm going to go back here, make sure I get all this, and I am going to edit my organization again. Edit the settings, go to the home page, and come here to a custom design, and this time I'm just going to get rid of all this stuff that was put in there, and I'm going to insert my original text and save, and now we're pretty good to go. So you can do a few things with inline HTML and things like that. One of the things that I looked at or you saw earlier, and I didn't point out, and now I can't find the site. Oh, I can find the site. This is that Montana Census and Economic Information Center, and by using a little bit of HTML and CSS, we put a little button here that leads you to a training site. So you can do some, if you know a little bit of HTML or someone in your organization does a little bit of CSS, you can do some inline styling there. Another thing I should point out is you can't change the maps.arcgis.com/home part of your organization URL. The only thing you can change is the front part. And think about that. What do you want your organization to start with? Because once you've done that, it's very difficult to change that. Okay, let's talk about groups. And I'm going to begin that discussion by opening up a map first. Now, I've opened up a new map, and you can see the default map happens to be a map of Australia, because this is naturally an Australian organization. And when I click on the base map gallery, instead of seeing the Esri maps, I'm looking at my custom chosen base map gallery. So how did I do this? I do that by going to my organization, and you need to be an administrator to do this, going to Edit Settings, and then clicking on the Map tab. Here are the options for the map. Here's a base map gallery. Here's the default base map, and here's my web application templates. Now for the base map gallery, I chose a group called Portal Base Map, which is one I made. Let's change it to the Esri default. Let's make the changes, and now let's go back to the map and see what's happened. Now my base map gallery is not my custom one. We're back to the Esri default. So it's pretty easy to do these things just by organizing things in the group. I'm working backwards. Let's take a look at the groups that I created to do this. Now you'll notice that a lot of my groups are already preset. I've got groups for the law enforcement team. I've got groups for operations, some for planning. Many of these are empty placeholders until I, as the administrator, can put things in there. Now here's some special groups. They're using my organization logo. Visually, I recognize that as the building blocks for my organization. So one of the things I did is I created a group called Portal Base Maps, the base maps from my portal, and I put them all in here. So visually I can identify this as a building block just by the icon, and here's all the base maps which belong in that group. Now let me show you how to make your own base map here real quick while we're on the topic. So I need to switch to another organization for some not quite obvious reasons. But here's another organization that I have, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a map, But I'm going to do something special. I've opened up the map with the default Esri base map, and because my browser recognizes that I'm located here in the Czech Republic, it automatically puts my geography here over Prague. So that all happened automatically. But suppose I want to make a new base map. I'm going to search for a layer, and someone's going to have to help me. Shoot. How do you say base map in Czech? I'm sorry? Okay, mappa. Thank you very much. I forgot that. So I am searching ArcGIS online for this. I didn't find it. Why not? I'm not sure. But here, search was within the map area. Let's just go ahead and expand the search. And I'm still not finding Zakladny mapa. Did I spell that correctly? Excuse me? It's making a liar out of me now. What's going on here? All right, let's try this another way. I know I found this earlier, so that's why I'm determined to do this. There it is. I don't know why I couldn't find it the other way, but there it is. So how do I add this as a base map? Now, if I click the Add button, it's just going to draw it on top of my map. But that's not what I want. I want this to be a base map. See, right now, this is a layer on my map on top of the base map. But I want it to be a base map. So how do I do that? Well, let's remove it, and let's do that search again. And this time, I click the name. And I have some other options here. One of the options is to use as base map. And if I click that, that gives me a new base map. So this is now not a layer, but it's a base map. And if I save this map and then add it to my group that contains my base maps, then it's there. And this is likely something that you're going to want to do. You're going to be wanting to use this base map and maybe some other special ones for your organization. Okay, let's go back to let's go back to my organization and let's look at groups again. And one of the things we'll talk about in a little bit is how to make custom applications. But I want to show you that there's templates for applications and there's templates for group galleries as well. So I own this group, or it's a group I can access, so I can click this share button. So I can share the link to it with anybody here, or I can click this button and say make a gallery application. And these are my two templates. Let's preview what this group looks like in this gallery template. That's pretty neat. I actually have a pretty nice destination that contains all of my maps and apps that are in this group. And I can look at it in a couple of different ways. And it also has a search tool. And I see that I have lots of different things here. I have an Excel spreadsheet. I even have a PDF file here. I have a KML. I even have a PowerPoint. So everything I put in that group is now available to people through this destination. And this is a little nicer destination maybe than going to the group itself. Now let's do something really interesting here. I'm the group owner, and I'm going to make this group public, meaning anybody can find it. So we'll click Save. When you make a group public and you click Share, I have some other options. I can embed this group in a website. And earlier I showed you the gallery ribbon. Let's build one of those. So what do I want it to look like? Do I want it to look like 2 rows on top of each other, maybe 4 rows, or just 1 row? Let's just do 1 simple row. And I'm done. All I need to do is take this HTML, I don't even have to know HTML, and now I can go to my favorite web building tool, which is Notepad. And I'm just going to paste this into Notepad, and I'm going to save it, and let's call it let's say, I'm going to call this workshop.html. And of course you wouldn't be doing this. You would be copying and pasting this into your own website. But now I have something called workshop.html, or I thought I did. I saved it in the wrong spot. Sorry. Where did I save that? I didn't save it to my desktop. That was my problem. All right, let's try this again. Workshop.html. Let's save it there. And there it is. And let's open it up and let's see what we have. So just by interacting with that little tool, I'm able to generate this HTML, which gives me this nice little gallery ribbon. So it's very, very simple to do. And why not? Okay, let's see what else I want to cover here before we move on. So now you all know how to do that. It's easy. Let's take a look at all right. Let's take a look at how to embed a map, and I'll save applications for a little later. But I do want to show you how to embed a map right now. So this is a gallery of different maps that I happen to have. And you'll also notice that, again, because I'm a Virgo probably, I like to do some branding here too. So which of these are maps and which are layers? Well, I can tell. This one looks like a map because it's got a picture of a terminal. And this one looks like it must be a layer because it's got a stack of layers on it. So I use visual cues like this also. Now, I probably do this more than I really need to. This one tells me that it's a tool. Right? So there's different visual cues that I use. But at any rate, let's open up one of these layers or one of these maps. And yeah, let's look at this one. So here's a map of Brisbane floods, and it should have a couple of different layers in it. And let's click Share, and then click Embed in a website. And we'll get to make a web application later. But here is where I decide what I want this to look at. What size is it? Do I want the zoom control? Sure, check the box. Do I want to have a scale bar? Sure, check the box. And you can see something changed up in here. Do I want to have a legend? Yeah, sure. Check the box and something changes. Now I'm done, and I can just copy this, and let's go back to Notepad again, and we'll replace what's currently in there with this new HTML, and we'll go ahead and save it. And now we should have some very nice things here. I now have an embedded map that has a legend and has a zoom control and has a little title there. So now I have a map that I've embedded here in my little document, and it even includes a legend. Simple, very easy. So you can make your ArcGIS Online information available very easily to anybody just by using some of these simple tools. And I think at this point I've pretty much covered. Oh, let's take a look at one more thing. I did mention the city of Greenville, South Carolina, and I did want to highlight something that they've done. And so let's search for some content from them. I search for Greenville, and right away I get some nice little visual cues. I can see which ones are coming from the city of Greenville. And here's a nice one. I like this one. Let's see if it's well documented. I'll click on the details. It's like, yes, this is very good. Excellent documentation. This is what gives me confidence that this is what I want to use. And what they've done is all of their public maps, they've created this organization persona. It's got the organization logo. The name is not John Doe. The name is City of Greenville, South Carolina GIS. So this is a good technique, and I like it when people use this. Okay. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoints here. Does anybody have any questions at this point about what you've seen? Everybody confident that they can make their organization look nice and you can maybe embed a map and embed a group gallery and things like that. It's pretty easy. Yes.
Your homepage, does it have to look always like this for applications?
Okay, the question is, does your homepage always have to kind of look like these other organizations do, right? That was, I think, your question, roughly paraphrased. And the answer pretty much is yes. So you can customize a few things on the framework, but not a lot. You can change the background, maybe add a button. You can change what's on the gallery ribbon, but this framework is pretty much set. The reason for that is, there's a lot of reasons for that. Because we need, in the dynamics of organizations and how people use web maps, we need to anticipate that there's some things that will always be on this page. So we maintain control over that. But remember, if you want to rebuild the portal, there's actually an API in back of all this, and you could rebuild it from scratch if you really wanted to, although I wouldn't recommend doing that. I'd recommend pretty much sticking with this as your internal, at least, destination, but then using some of the techniques I just showed you to maybe make a more public destination. If you're a local government user, we do have a solution for local government, which includes a different kind of look and feel for this that you can use as well. So there are other templates for providing public access to information, but an organization portal is pretty much set in concrete here. You had a question?
The question is if I question is if I, as a public person, can have multiple accounts to try to play with it, or
Okay, as a public person, can you have multiple accounts? Sure. I probably have a dozen different accounts. I've got several public accounts. I actually have several organizational accounts as well, mostly because I do a lot of demonstrations and I've worked with other people. I actually belong to, I think, probably 20 different organizations. So you can have as many accounts as you want. You can belong to as many organizations as you want. One word of caution, and I've been caught by this myself, and it was a disaster. I had a public account with lots of stuff in it, everything I'd worked on for a long time. And someone sent me an invitation to their organization. When you get the invitation, there's a couple of ways that you can invite people in your organization and a couple of things you can do. I'll talk about that in detail later. But I made the mistake of joining the organization with my public account username. So what happened? Everything that was in my public account got transferred to the organization, and when I got kicked out of the organization, I didn't have access to it anymore. So read the fine print on the invitation. There's better ways to invite people to your organization, but just keep that in mind. Remember someday when you do the same mistake I did that I warned you about it first. So, all right, any other questions before we move on real quick? Okay, looks like we're good. All right, back to the PowerPoints. And I think I'm speaking faster, so I'll try to slow down just a little bit. All right, you've got a very nice looking organization. You've created some groups, you've documented the groups, you've done some pretty interesting things there. Now what you want to do is you want to create some things that people can work with. You don't want a first-time user of your organization to go there and find nothing of interest. You want to find lots of things of interest there. So you want to create some maps and some applications that are interesting for people to use. How many people use ArcGIS for server? All right, looks like a few more than had an organization. As I said earlier, ArcGIS Online is Esri's gift to you. I really believe that, and this is a great tool if you use ArcGIS Server. Why is that? Web maps are really cool things. I can make them easily, and I can bring them into applications and do all sorts of great things with them. I can look at them on my iPhone or my iPad or my Android, or lots of things I can do with them. Your ArcGIS server has services that you use, but they're locked up in that server. Unless you have built custom applications which connect to those service endpoints, they're just sitting on your server. So one of the first things you can do is register your ArcGIS services in your ArcGIS Online account, document them, make them look pretty, and you can leverage your investment in ArcGIS Server in many different ways. So this adds a lot of value to your ArcGIS Server, and I'll show you how to do this in just a second. We've already talked about how you can use galleries to organize things, and you can also use those to create those little gallery templates. One of the things that we also looked at, we may even have looked at this same item, is this inspires confidence in me that this is authoritative content. As a GIS user, I'm always looking for good content. And when I find something like this documented well, I'm believing this is authoritative content. So again, this speaks for the persona behind this public content here that I can access. So I really like to see that. Now, a long time ago, the way to publish the best service was to take a whole bunch of layers and a whole bunch of sublayers and maybe sublayers and put them all in the one service and figure it out from there. It's no longer the best way to go. We live in a world of mashups now, and what's important in enabling mashups is to provide tiny, granular little building blocks rather than a long list of things to choose from. So on the left here might be an example of what a typical ArcGIS service might look like, or might have looked like 10 years ago. I still find a lot like this, unfortunately, but this is a lot of stuff to wade through. If I'm only interested in making a map about bicycle trails, I've got to look through a lot of things here. And some of these have sublayers, so I have to keep on drilling in and looking for what I want. One thing I recommend doing, if this is what your services look like today, is breaking them down, at least into themes. So here we've taken all of the bicycle layers and broken them down individually, and all of our bridges and construction, we've organized them in little smaller blocks. And this is especially useful if you want to empower the use of these as building blocks for building other applications. All right, let's take a look at this. This is actually one of my favorite sections. However, if you don't use ArcGIS for Server, this might be a little confusing, but let's see what we can do. Now, whenever you publish a service using ArcGIS Server, sorry, I'm trying to type and talk at the same time. What's created is a services directory. And a services directory is something that's kind of automatic. But how well it's documented is not automatic. So I have gone to the services directory for some of the core ArcGIS online services. These are published using ArcGIS Server. And they're organized into different folders here. So here's a folder of the demographics that I have, demographic layers that are available. Let me just make a quick map of one of these layers. And I'm just going to sign into my public account here for now. That'll be easy enough. Actually, I'm already signed in here. So let's go ahead and make a quick map. Oh, no, that's Australian data. I better sign in here. Oh, and I also recommend when you sign in to check the box that says keep me signed in, because that'll keep you logged in for a couple of weeks. And sometimes if you don't do that, you come back in a day and your session time's out and you're sort of lost there. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a map and let's look for one of those services. And let's see, we've got some issues here. I need to get back to my default topographic base map, and let's go back to Redlands, California. All right, there we are. Hometown. Now, let's go ahead and search for layers. And this time I'm going to look for diversity. That's one of the published services coming from this ArcGIS online service that we're looking at. So let's go ahead and find that. And here it is, USA Diversity Index. And let's go ahead and add it to the map and let's see what it looks like. All right, now as I zoom out, I can tell that we're crossing different scale thresholds. So here I see states, but when I click on the state, I get a nice little pop-up, a nice little pie chart. It's pretty nice. If I zoom in a little bit, I cross a scale threshold, and here's a county. This is my home county, San Bernardino County. And again, I get a nice little description and a nice little pop-up which tells me about the population diversity here. And I can keep drilling in. And I'll go to different levels of information, but each of these represent the content really nicely. Let's go back now. I'm just going to backtrack to my content here, and let's go to this service directory, and this is what I was just looking at, this thing here called diversity index. And I can see that the GIS professionals behind the scenes here did their homework. This is a really well documented service, and it's got lots of information in it. It even includes tags and things like this. And what's important about this? I'll show you. If I want to add this as a service to my ArcGIS Online account, I click Add Item. The item I want to add is coming from the web. It's an ArcGIS web service. I paste the URL in there, and wow, look, I get tags, I get the name. I'm going to change the name here a little bit. USA Diversity, and I'll add the item, and let's take a look and see what we get. Look at that, I'm done. Because all my homework was done here at the services directory endpoint, when I add this to ArcGIS Online, I got the description, I even got all the tags that were in there. So right away my work is easy, and the default thumbnail that's been created for me looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and open this in a new map. So I'm opening up this layer in a new map, and let's take a look and see what we have. Let's drill on in. Now here it is, and I have to drill on in, and I see I've got different sublayers because each of these represents a different scale. Here I am, I'm at the county scale, but what happens when I click? Nothing. Why is that? Well, what I have to do is I have to enable the pop-up for that layer, and I do that by choosing this little arrow next to the layer and clicking Enable Pop-up. Now, when I click on the map, I at least have a representation of that information. But this isn't a very good representation. I'd rather have that pie chart. So let's improve that. Let's go back and we'll click Configure Pop-up. And now for the title, let's see. Name is the county. Anything that's in curly braces, the little brackets, is a field name in the attribute. So I'm going to use that as the name. Rather than display the list of field attributes, I'm going to get rid of all of them and save the pop-up. Let's see what we have. Now we have a pretty short pop-up here. Let's change that a little bit. Let's go back to configure the pop-up, and this time let's create a custom attribute display. And this is where I can mix and match text and attributes. So I can say the name of this county is, and then I choose the field, and that was name. And it is located in the state of, I thought I saw a state there. Oh, it's state abbreviation, but that's okay, close enough. You get the idea. Let's save the pop-up and let's see what we have. Now I've got a little bit better representation of the data, and because I'm using field names, it'll change as I click around the map. So that's pretty good. But let's add that pie chart. That's something that I want to add. I really like that. So I go to the bottom here, and one of the things I can add is a pie chart. And what are we going to call this? Let's call this, let's just say, hover for more info. And I'm going to choose some of the fields to display in the pie chart. So here's non-Hispanic, Black, American Indian, Pacific Islanders, other, you get the idea. I'm not going to actually do this for real. But let's go ahead and save the pop-up and see what I have. Look at that. That was pretty easy to do. But you had to know how to do it. Now, I've added this layer from my server to ArcGIS Online. I don't want to have other people to have to do everything that I've done. As the owner of the service, what I can do is I can come here and I can now click Save Item Properties. And what this means is I've added this layer, I've configured the experience, and I've saved it with the layer. Anybody else that uses this layer will have my configured pop-up experience. They can override it if they want to, but at least they have something meaningful to look at and to work with. Now, of course, I still have lots more work to do here because if I zoom out to the states, I haven't defined the pop-up for that. So some of this is a little bit tedious, but again, register the services and do these, and you'll gain lots of rewards for that. While we're on the topic of pop-ups, let's consider something else here for a moment. All right, I'm going to take us for a tour of, let's go to Kentucky today. And here happens to be a spreadsheet, and this happens to be traffic camera locations in the state of Kentucky. And here it is. That's what it looks like. And there's lots of information. I've got a URL in here, and the URL is actually interesting because what it does is it points to a actual traffic camera here. So it's a snapshot from the traffic camera, and this is taken I think it's every 5 minutes here. Some of these are quicker, some are not. But that's something interesting that I might want to use. And another key piece of information is I have latitude, longitude, and I could use an address or something like that as well. So let's close this spreadsheet, and let's take that spreadsheet from the folder that's located in and make a map. And to do that, in Chrome, all I need to do is drag and drop, and I'm done. Now, if I'm using Firefox, I can drag and drop. If I'm using an older version of Internet Explorer, I can't, because Internet Explorer doesn't support drag and drop, or at least the older versions don't. So how do I add that? If I don't have drag and drop, I would have to click Add and then Add Layer from File, and then I would have to choose the file by browsing. So there's a way to do it, even though it's not supported. But I'm doing pretty good here. I've got some traffic cameras on the map, and I've got some info. There's that URL, and that shows me the little snapshot. Let's first begin by improving the symbols. We can configure the symbols, and I can choose a different single symbol, or I can shade them, do some thematic mapping. So I could maybe make unique symbols, and we can symbolize based on, well, there's not much here. These are traffic cameras, but you get the idea. So we can do thematic maps, or I can choose a single symbol. Let's just change the single symbol, and there's a bunch of different symbols I can choose from, and the symbols are organized into different kind of libraries. So if I wanted to use this green little pop-up, and click Done, and now I've got a little pop-up, or a better symbol, and I still need to work on that information. Let's do something even more interesting. Let's look for a traffic light. And I'm searching the web, and let's look for images. And let's see, I want to find a PNG because I want it to have a nice little transparent background. And let's see what I got here. This one might be good. Let's try that one. View image. All right, this one looks like it might work. So I'm going to copy that one, and let's go back to my map. And this time I'm going to change the symbol, but I'm going to add an image from the web. And I just drop in the URL, click Done, and then, there we go. That's pretty good. So that's my little traffic. You get the idea. You can figure this out. Now we're done changing symbols. Let's configure the pop-up in a more meaningful way. And this is where we can do some pretty tricky things. Let's open up one of these and you can follow along. So that's what the pop-up is there. So for the title, let's use this field here called description, which is where it's located. So the title of the pop-up will be the description. For the list of attributes, there's really nothing there of any interest to me. So let's just go ahead and turn the attributes off. But I do have that little picture. So let's add an image this time instead of a pie chart. And I'm going to do something a little clever. For the caption, I will say tap to view larger photo. And I'm saying tap because I can open up this map on an iPad, and you can't click on an iPad, you have to tap. Now, for the URL, what do you want to show in the pop-up? We're going to use that link, and then when you click on that, we'll just open up a little bigger version of that and click OK, save the pop-up, and now we've got a very nice presentation of our little traffic cameras, and when I click on it, I get a little larger view. So it's pretty easy to do, but again, when you author a map, it's all about being an author, and when you save the map, you want to save it so that the presentation of information is very good for your intended user. So let's see, do I want to take this a step further? Now let's hang on for a second and we'll come back. Let me just go back to the PowerPoints here for just a moment, and I'll show you something using some interesting check data here in a moment. All right. So we've learned about adding services, we've learned about configuring an experience with those, we've learned about configuring a pop-up experience even using some local data. One thing I do want to add, and I usually don't cover this in best practices, but I should cover it here. When I add data from a spreadsheet or when I add a local shapefile, I'm limited to 1,000 features. Why is that? Some people say, Esri wants me to pay more money and get the subscription service because I got to publish it. If I have more than 1,000 features I need, well, that's not why we do it. So what happens is whenever I add local data in a web map, it actually gets imported into the web map. And technically what that means is that the locations and attributes are serialized into the JSON of the map. And if you don't understand what that means, don't worry about it. 1,000 features max is your limit, but your mileage may vary. So if I'm using Internet Explorer, I'm actually kind of in trouble. Older versions of Internet Explorer, if I can maybe add 800 features and all of a sudden the map starts getting a little sluggish. It's not as slippy as it used to be. With Chrome or Firefox, I can add maybe a couple thousand features. I'd have to add them in 1,000 feature chunks, but I can add a couple of thousand and my map is still fine. So it's the overhead of managing those features in the context of the browser is why we put that 1,000 feature limit. If I add a shapefile, same thing applies. The more vertices you have in your polygons, that creates additional overhead. So you need to make some decisions about what to use in a web map. If you're using small pieces of local data, shapefiles or spreadsheets, you're fine. But when you start getting close to 1,000 features, there's more efficient ways to do that, and that would be to publish that data as a service, which makes it work in just about all conditions, or at least for the purposes of this course, we're going to say yes. All right, so enough about the CSV files. Let's talk about configurable web apps, and this is really where the power of ArcGIS Online, I think, comes into play. And this is one of my favorite things. It used to be you had to be a pretty talented programmer to build a custom web app, but you don't have to be anymore. You can mess around with these templates. They're configurable, and anybody can do this. You can be an instant hero in your organization. Your boss is going to say, I want you to create a custom application that does this. And he's going to think, this is going to be 3 months of work. And what you're going to do is you're going to do it in 5 minutes and take the next 2.5 months off, go on vacation. Because it's that easy to do, and I'll show you how to do that. There's a built-in library of templates, but that's not all the templates that exists. There's story map templates. Some of those are built into the library. Some of those are available as downloads. So you have to look around and you'll get familiar with these. And most of them require very little work. Maybe using Notepad and a couple of minor edits is all you need to do. But you do have all the source code. So if you want to take these templates and extend them, change the style, the color, move things around, you can do that because you have all the source code. We'll skip this part. Let's go ahead and build a custom application now. And let's see. In this case, what we're going to do is I'm going to open up a new map. And let's do something, let's see, what am I going to do here? Let's go to my desktop. So what I had, I have to use this because I asked the people here from ArcData to get this data for me. So what they did is they got me some web cameras from here in Prague. And let's build a little map using this spreadsheet here. So again, because I'm using Chrome, I can just sort of drag and drop, and there's my little web cameras here in Prague, and I've got these little URLs which point out to the cameras. Of course, it's dark, but that's what it looks like at this camera right now. So actually at this point, I'm pretty much well done, I know, because I put in the spreadsheet everything that I needed to open it up in a template application which does some very interesting things. So let's save this. I'm going to title this the Prague traffic map. We'll give it a tag here. And let's go ahead and save the map. All right, so there's my traffic map, and now let's share it. Now, I have to make some decisions about how I want this to be shared, and the administrator can override these, and he can control access here too. But me as the map author, I can say, I want this to be shared just within people in one of my groups. Or I could say, well, I want to put it into a group so that people can find it easily, but I want to share it to everybody in my organization, but not the public. Or I could say, look, I want to build a public application here, so I'm going to check the box for everybody. So you decide who has access to this. Now, earlier we looked at how to embed it in a website. This time we're going to make a web application, and let's take a look at some examples. If I want to take this map now, and I want to make it easy for someone to use, I can use a template like this. This template doesn't get any simpler. All you can do is click on the map and look at the pop-up. Of course, I'd have to build a better pop-up, but you know how to do that. I just haven't done that yet. But this is a great little application template that you can use if you want to make some public information available, because they don't see this web map authoring tool. What they see is a very simple to use application. So that's an interesting template. Here's another template. This one's called the Basic Viewer, and this one has lots of the tools that you see in the web map viewer, but none of the authoring or configuration. So I've got a way to turn layers on and off. I've only got one layer, but I have a base map gallery, so if I wanted to, I can change the base map, allow the users to change the base map. I have a measure tool. I've got some print capabilities. I've got a legend that I can dismiss, and I have a little overview map here. So I can move that around. So this has got lots of interesting tools, and I might want to use this. This is in preview right now, but if I wanted to, I could just grab this link and email it to somebody. But what I want to do is custom configure this. I want to build a custom application with this. So I'm going to click Publish. And what this does is it creates a marriage between my map, the traffic map, and this application, and now my map will be tied to this application. I now have a new item that's in my contents, and I want to edit the thumbnail and add a description, but I'm going to go right to the configuration console. So each template has different options because, of course, each one is different. This one lets me do some things like, let's make it, what's your favorite color? Nobody's green. Okay, let's make it green. And let's scroll to the bottom here and click Save. And in the preview window, we can see I've changed the style in the background. It's now a green application. Okay. Now I also get to override some other things. So the title can be View Live Traffic Tonight! Exclamation point. And I'll quickly hurry on here because you get the idea. Right, so you can edit things and it just makes these changes. And here is also where I can choose which tools I want. Do I want, which things? Maybe I want to get rid of the base maps or bookmarks or measure or share or whatever. I just toggle those off and on. And now when I save, I have custom configured an application with just the tools that I want. And that's pretty neat. Let's go back to my content now. And let's go pick up my Prague traffic. Oops, sorry, I was there already. Let's go back to my Prague traffic map and do something really exciting with this. So once again, we go to Share and make a web application, and this time I'm going to use a different template. This is the MapTour template, and just to show you what the MapTour template looks like, let's go to storymaps.esri.com. And this is a really interesting site. If you saw my little talk earlier this morning, you saw me build an application for Prague that looked like this with this little spyglass, and we can kind of do that again. But one thing that I didn't get to work for some reason this morning was I wanted to open up this application. So there was a little hiccup in the internet or something happened. But this is an application which our folks here in ArcData helped build. There was a International Congress of Speleology here in Brno, and so they took a spreadsheet with locations of commercial caves and also links to photographs, and they built this pretty cool little application. It's pretty interesting. So for some reason earlier today I couldn't get that to work. But let's go back to our Prague traffic map and let's use this traffic in that application template. And once again, I click Publish. And this is going to be my Prague traffic tour, let's call it. Now I click Save and Publish. Now this is an application that actually has more than just a configurable web page. It actually has something called a builder. And look at that. At 2 clicks, I have a nice little map tour that lets me look at live traffic cameras here throughout the city. It's pretty cool. See, I can take the next 2.5 months off of work now instead of having to work on this. So this is possible because I knew what needed to be in the spreadsheet to make this application work, but it's very easy to do this. And you can even add photos from other locations using this builder. So this builder lets me do things like I could add from a Flickr account, I could add from another source. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and make a quick modification, and I'll change the layout. So now the picture is on the right and the map is on the left. I can come in here and edit the icons, icon colors, and so forth. So this builder is actually a pretty interesting application, and we're putting some more focus and some more investment in things like this, which make it easy. So I'm almost out of time, but let me just make sure that I've kind of covered the rest of the getting started, and then we'll have some time for questions, and I'll be here having some Pilsner tonight. And so we can have lots of time to discuss things. And I'll be here tomorrow as well, so we can even sit down and we can even work through some of this. So as an organization administrator, you want to invite people into your organization. And I told you earlier that I had that experience where I accidentally used my personal account. Whenever you join an organization with an existing account, ArcGIS Online assumes that you are going to join that organization, which means all of your stuff will be transferred over to the organization. So you have to be a little bit careful about that. So what I recommend is one of 2 things to do. There's a couple of ways to add people to your organizations. One way is using your enterprise authentic identity provider. What this means is I work for the city of Prague. I already have a login at the city, so they already have an identity provisioner at the city that I log in with. Now, you don't want to have people remember 2 passwords. What you can do is connect to your authentication provider, your provisioner, and there's some details there. It has to be SAML 2.0 is one of the standards that we support, and there's a couple of others. But you can connect to that so people can log in to ArcGIS Online with the same login that they use today. That's an interesting option. Now, this doesn't, you still have to set control for people, what they can access and things like that through ArcGIS Online. It doesn't know what they have access to through your authentication provider, but they do have that same login. Another way is you can invite users in your organization either by pre-establishing a login or letting them use whatever login that they want. And I made the mistake of getting an invite and then accidentally using my public account to log into the organization, which is why all my stuff went to the organization. And there's a tool on GitHub that I had to use to transfer things out. So you're not lost, but it is a little bit of a pain. But you can pre-establish logins as well. And what it'll do is it'll use the first part of their email address and give it an underscore your organization's name extension. And then that's how they'll get an invite. They'll get a little email and they just click through. We already looked at the administration console. So there's a name. As an administrator, you can adjust the roles and the privileges. You can look at each user's items, and you can transfer them to other owners. So one thing I've already told you about a dozen times, think about having an organization persona for all your public stuff you want to put out there. So if John Doe works on it, and when he's done, the administrator might want to review it and say, okay, looks good, great map. Now, as an administrator, you can take John Doe's ownership of that map and transfer it to the organization persona before it goes out public. So it's all done through this little console here. There are different kinds of users in the organization, and this is perhaps best left for you to look at in the documentation. Administrator is king. Publisher has the ability to publish services, but no administration, and a user can just save and make maps. We're introducing a new role called a viewer, and a viewer is just that, just view-only capabilities. And let's see. Other systems in your organization, you might want to leverage that as well. With an ArcGIS online subscription, you do get Esri Maps for Office, which lets people make maps and use your ArcGIS online resources in Excel. You can also put those maps in PowerPoint, and there's other variations on this for IBM Cognos and Microsoft technology and things like that. Another part of the ecosystem, which I have no time to talk about, are the ArcGIS applications. Collector for ArcGIS, Dashboard for ArcGIS are two of what will likely be a handful of ArcGIS applications that are designed to do very specific things, but they need to hook in through an organization. So I really don't have much time to really talk about that part. And then finally, the last thing you want to do is promote your organization. You've put a lot into it, you've done some great work, and now you want to promote it throughout the rest of your organization so that you can reap the benefits of your investment. So with that, we finished our hour and a half. Does anybody have any questions or something else you want me to answer here right now? Okay, looks like no? I'll be out there, so grab me a beer and I'll come answer all your questions. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.